Okay, meine Damen und Herren, ein Mann, ein sehr bedeutender Mann schon seit Jahren und Jahrzehnten für uns alle, die wir Romantik mögen, die wir Musik mögen, die wir Humor mögen, die wir Tragik mögen, die wir Lebensweisheiten, die so über die Bande kommen mögen. Mit dem darf ich mich heute unterhalten. Der Mann, der High Fidelity geschrieben hat natürlich, der seine Liebe zu seinem Fußballverein beschworen hat, der aber auch beschworen hat, was es bedeutet, wenn Leute auf einem Dach stehen und sich vielleicht gemeinschaftlich umbringen. Es ist Nick Hornby. It's a pleasure, Nick, talking to you today about your new novel, Just Like You. It's a story about a 22-year-old guy whose name is Joseph, and or Joseph and Lucy, who is 42 years old, a teacher living in a middle-class surrounding. Is it Islington, by the way, or are you?
It's not quite specified in this book. It's somewhere like Islington.
And I need to say I'm really in love with her from page 4 or 5, because she seems to be such a nice person, and I imagine she's a little bit like Kate Beckinsale, isn't she?
Yes, that would be a good model, actually, Kate Beckinsale. Yeah. Okay.
How did you find her?
Well, this book, it was two things coming together. So 3 or 4 years ago, an exchange in the shop. I think it was an older guy and a young woman, and they were having a little flirt as he was buying something, and I thought, oh, they're really cute together. And then I started to think of all the reasons that they will never get together, even if they were both single. And there was age, but also class, and I think there was race, and I started to wonder whether these things were as insurmountable, whether these problems were as insurmountable as we thought. And I thought about them every now and again, every few months, and they started to become characters. But I still didn't want to write anything necessarily until the referendum happened. And in the year or so after the referendum, when it really seemed like one half of the country would never speak to the other half again, I went back to them and thought, oh, maybe this is the time to write about divisions and separations.
Mm-hmm. But this personality of a teacher, of a teacher who is 42 years old and lives a life. She isn't that happy, but she's not completely unhappy. She's in the middle of it, in some kind of twilight. How did you find her? How do you create somebody like her?
Well, because I don't tend to start writing very quickly, that I'm doing other things, and these characters are sitting here for a while. So every time I go back to them, another detail comes. So, I find the ages of her children, I find the problem with her husband, I find her job, I find her character. I mean, she had to have a sense of humor. She had to be pretty for the purposes of my book. So over maybe a 2-year period, details come until eventually I think, okay, I understand you. I can find an equivalence for you. I never take any of my friends and put them in a book, or someone I know, but the other way around. I invent someone, and if I can go through my 63 years of Rolodex and say, oh, I did meet someone like that once, then I feel reassured that they exist.
What is about Joseph? He's 22 years old, and there are people, I know people who say, you can't feel, you can't realize how it is to be black, to be a black guy. You will never comprehend how discrimination feels like. But you, or the story, just like you, is more or less a counter argument, because you did exactly this thing. You did exactly this thing and said, I'm in Joseph.
Well, I tried. I mean, this is two white guys talking about me writing a black guy, so I don't know if either of us know whether I did it or not. I mean, obviously, this is a very complicated part. It was a complicated part of the book for me, and I agonized about it for a long time, whether I would make Joseph black or not. But I live in North London. I live in a multicultural community. This is what I see when I open my front door. I see all these people. And the idea that because I am white, I can only or must only write about white people for the rest of my life seemed wrong to me. So I thought, no, I have to be brave. I have to think about the people I've met. And when I've finished, I have to show it to people who know more about it than me. And that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Because, you know, there's one situation when Joseph tried to enter the house of Lucy, and she doesn't come to the door, and then the police comes along, and two policemen search him, and you know, this is very similar to what Leroy Logan, the former superintendent of the Metropolitan Police and member of the Jamaican community, described in a new book. He says, when I was young and I was to my trumpet class, then the police stopped me and said, yeah, what's in this case, in this trumpet case? And he said, of course, obviously a trumpet, you know. And this reminds me of what Joseph goes through, and so it's very close, isn't it, to what people experienced?
Yes, it is, and I mean, I think for that sort of thing, you just have to watch and listen and feel, and it, you know, it makes me angry. It makes me angry that some of my son's friends go through this routinely, and I think that what some people of color who have read the book appreciate is that the black characters are not outraged. The white characters are outraged because they have never experienced anything like this. Lucy on that night is outraged by the police's treatment of Joseph, but it's so prevalent in the black community. It's such a common experience that for them it's just, it's the same old shit. Mm. And so they roll their eyes and they don't like the police, but it's not a significant moment in their life because there have been so many others like it. This is a way, you know, for Lucy to be with him is a way for Lucy to see, of course.
Mm-hmm. What was more difficult, to get under the skin of a 22-year-old, or to get under a guy who is black, who feel like a guy who is black?
I think that the moment you are writing about someone who really isn't you, it's all equally difficult. But you have to listen, watch very carefully, look harder, listen more to people. So, you know, I worry as much about getting Lucy right as I worry about getting Joseph right. But at this particular political moment, there was more pressure on me to get Joseph right.
Mm. You said it's a book about distances, or about being distant to each other. Is it who has to go who has the longer way in front of him? Is it Lucy to you know, to get in touch, or to become intimate with a 22-year-old, or is it Joseph to become intimate with somebody who is the same age of his mother?
That's an interesting question. I suspect the answer is probably Joseph. Probably not because of class or race, but particularly age. That when you contemplate a relationship with someone 20 years older than you, then you are reaching life's milestones at very different times. And I am. I left the book open in terms of the far future, not the near future, because I think they can only think about the near future.
So let's talk about milestones in life. You know, your fans, grew old together with you. You know, we make one mixtape after the other for one gorgeous woman after the other. And now the depressing truth is you tell us if you are over 50, it's over. You are out of the love story business. You should focus on Indian cooking. But you know it's because it's over. Think of the situation when Lucy meets this novelist who
Yeah.
You know, a guy who is worn out by too many love stories.
Yeah.
This is depressing, isn't it? So is this a conclusion? There is an age when love stories are over. You don't think about love stories anymore.
No, I really do not believe it. It was a particular character whose kind of smugness and you know, he's very pleased with himself, and he has this fatal flaw when it comes to women. And it's not just that he has a disorder, but that he wants to talk about it. It's the talking about it on a first date, effectively, that is the problem. So I don't think it's anything to do with his age. It's really the kind of character he is. And I can absolutely imagine love stories for 60s and 70s and beyond.
And can you imagine, you know, of course you can imagine that somebody decides, oh, you know, I have this dysfunction and I should talk about it on the why revealing such information? I mean, you know, but it was in your mind.
He was very clumsy. I wanted him to do something clumsy. Yeah. There is an alternative version of that scene where he takes a pill when they're leaving the restaurant, and I don't know about it. Lucy doesn't know about it, and it's a different outcome. But he's not that kind of man.
Then there is a situation when Lucy sits together with two more or less friends of hers or acquaintances, Emma and Sophie. And at one point, Sophie says, "You know, everybody I know is unhappy." Do you think very often that people around you are more or less unhappy? Well, the other way around. Let's say you meet a couple together for more than for 19 years, and he and she say, you know, we are still in love. Do you believe them?
If they say so, I believe them. I think it's a very hard thing to say if you are not. I think people who are not in love find it hard to say that they are in love. There is something that stops it from happening. No, I think that the particular women in Lucy's life, they are quite materialistic. They are the kinds of people who just want to jump over the next hurdle. So whether it's marriage or enough money to send your kids to private school, and you jump over a few of these and you think, now what? I married the wrong guy. I don't have the inner resources to enjoy my life. I mean, I don't know anyone who has not had a significant challenge at some point in their 50 or 60 years. And they are more or less happy because of that.
But, you know, still, I'd like to measure how romantic are you, or how much of a romantic are you still? Do you think it's possible to keep love and to keep this particular kind of affection for more than a decade or 2 decades? Do you think it's still possible?
I think it changes into something else if you are lucky. Yeah.
Into what, if you are lucky?
Into a very deep friendship which has a sexual component that is enough for everybody.
Fantastic. You know, it's placed, of course, for a reason in 2016, the year of the decision, the Brexit decision in the UK. And it's interesting that you describe it like, we like a question of belonging instead of, political rationalizing, political facts. It's how is Brexit, or the decision between leave or remain, a question of belonging to a particular group?
Well, it was an extraordinary time, I think. And one of the reasons I wanted to write the book is because I started to get frustrated with people on my own side, which was, of course, Remain. Because the narrative started to develop that we were right and they were wrong. We were clever and they were stupid. We were tolerant and they were racist. And after a while, I thought, this is not satisfying. You cannot tell exactly one half of the country, or 52%, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be in this mess. You cannot tell 52% of the country that they are stupid. And, there were some interesting theories about the people who voted leave. Of course, they see the EU as a threat because they don't go anywhere. So it's all about coming here. Whereas the people voted Remain, it's all about going there and opportunity. And people who don't have opportunity see only threat. But in the end, what I came to think of, the referendum as, and in fact, maybe the Trump election, was people were asked this question: are you happy? Are you happy enough? And 48% of us thought, no, things are all right, really. And 52% said, no, I am not happy. And I don't know what this question is about the European Union, but I am not happy. And the whole vocabulary of the referendum was difficult because stay, remain is static. Leave is dynamic. And if you feel stuck, if your town suffers from very high unemployment, if you feel that globalization has killed an industry in your community, then you're not happy and you do not want to preserve the status quo.
But you know what?
It's different. London was 75-25 to Remain. But still 25%. It's not hard to find the 25%. And mostly the 75% were middle class people who are happy enough with the way things are.
It's interesting in the story that I realized for nearly the first time that people sometimes even people on, as you mentioned, the smarter side, say things like, I'm a European, I'm so European, and then but you never ask them, okay, what does that mean? In your book or your story, ask what does that mean? You are so European, flying to Spain and lying in the sun and drink gin tonic. Is this European?
Yes.
It's like you have your own doubts towards your own people, your own group.
Yes, I do have my own doubts, and in fact, when I was nearly finished the book, I said to my friends, think back to 2016. Why did you vote Remain? It was different in 2018 because all the leavers, the politicians, had been exposed as charlatans and fools, and so with hindsight, it was easy. But in 2016, why did you vote Remain? And then people said these things. They said, no, I'd like my children to go to a European university. And you think, A, you've just made that up. You invented that. And B, your children aren't going to go to a European university. They'll go to an English university like anyone else. And mostly it was about who was on the other side. That was the truth for me as well. That the people who were on the other side frightened me. I could not vote for them. So then you get to the belonging. Whose camp are you in? It became like a Catholic and Protestant, a matter of faith. It's still a matter of faith because nothing's happened 4 years later.
Mm.
It will happen very soon.
You know, when you say a matter of faith, there are even liberal people like the American philosopher Sam Harris, who say Black Lives Matter is a question, or it's more or less a faith movement. It's not a political movement. It's a faith movement because you have to think or to feel in the right way. And so he's he doubts that this is the right way to go, even as a liberal. Do you make the experience that you can, let's say, on a dinner table with friends, that you can exclude yourself by not saying the right thing, by not having the exact right position, or is it still an open-minded group of
No, it's not so open-minded. And in fact, one of the things that inspired the book was a very big argument I had with a friend who was a Remainer. I found an article that was written. This is the second time I voted in a referendum. The first time was in 1975. It was the same referendum, and that was my first vote. The same thing, stay or go, and then it was 70% to remain. But I found an article by a very famous left-wing English politician, very beloved, a bit like Bernie Sanders for Americans. This guy was for the English.
Yeah.
And the arguments that he made against the EU were exactly the same, more or less, as the arguments that right-wingers were making against the EU now. He said, how can, as a sovereign country, how can you not make your own laws? How can you not control your own economy, etc.? And I was very struck by how these things were left-wing in 1975 and right-wing in 2016. But mostly I just wanted to observe it as a writer. I wanted to observe what people were thinking. And one of the things I observed was that I sat with groups of people who all my life I've talked to them about books, football, movies, music. I know what they know. And I know that they don't know anything about World Trade Organization terms. But then they were getting very angry about World Trade Organization terms. I think, what is this? Where my friends have been lured out into this position where they have to talk rubbish about things they know nothing about.
Do you think, or did you feel the, let's say, the inspiration to know more about stuff like that, to know more about political or economical details?
I tried when it was going on, and I have to say, I don't have a molecule in my body that can get all the way through one of those articles.
Okay, and that's another. You said before your book is about distance,
yeah.
But and it is, or I read it as a book about identity as well. And at one point, Joseph said they are against us. And I was wondering who, from his point of view, from his perspective, who is us? Is he a British guy, supporting his father's leave position? Is he a guy who would say us means upcoming artists, people who want to be successful musicians, us who doesn't have the proper education like people on a university? So who is us from his point of view?
Well, I can't remember the line that you referred to, but I think that Joseph's position in particular is complicated. He doesn't want to belong to many of the groups that offer him membership. He feels slightly apart from all of them. And I guess it's the same with Lucy. And they come together to form this space, which, to their surprise, suits them both better than any of the alternative clubs that are out there for them. And and they come to discover that some things that they thought mattered didn't matter. I mean, the middle class, the university educated middle class, we always think it's so important that we have to be with someone who reads books. But, you know, if you have two kids, then within a couple of years, no one's talking about reading anymore. And what becomes important at that point is a shared philosophy about how to treat the kids, a sense of humor, a sense of fairness, kindness. These are things that transcend class, but we work within class when we choose how we're going to spend our lives.
And then another question about just your craft. How do you know so much about music producing nowadays? You know, but how two kids like this Pound guy, how they you describe exactly what they are talking about and what is important for them, and how do you know so much about this music producing?
That was old-fashioned novelistic research. But I knew two young men who do this.
Yeah.
And I talked to them about their, you know, what they needed and what they did, because I find it quite hard to understand. And then again, I showed it to them and say, is this something like what you do? Is this a proper description? I find it fascinating. I find it very hard sometimes to think of it as art. There's a lot of theft.
Okay.
I mean, you just take someone else's bass line and you put it in your mix. You know, it's interesting, but yeah, that was that, and some of the things that happened as a result of the referendum. These were as a result of looking things up. And I think, as far as I know, the wages for the building trade did rise after the referendum because some people did go home.
You know, we as Germans grew up with the idea that the UK, especially London, is one of the coolest places on earth. Because, you know, when I traveled as a 14 or 15-year-old schoolboy, we went to London and were absolutely amazed by it. And you know, in the end, I still have the image that this is a fantastic place. That London is still the home of cool, especially when we remember Olympic Games in 2012. When Daniel Craig kicked out the Queen of this helicopter, fantastic, you know, a dream. And then Brexit came, and the decision came, or the decision took place. And what we now hear from the UKs all the time, this is what Boris Johnson said, this is what this and that guy did, and you know, now another big fight with the EU. Would you say, as an ambassador of the British coolness, would you say that the UK is still cool, or is it lost?
At the moment, it is lost. It is catastrophically lost. I mean, it's interesting that you brought up the Olympic ceremony, because that meant a lot to us, and I didn't know that it meant the same. You know, other people had noticed, as it were. I think that Olympic ceremony, it was possible to watch that and think, this is it. You know, we've done it. We've created a country that represents me. I mean, it was so weird to be my age and think, oh, they're talking to me. This ceremony talks to me. The things that I value are represented in here. It's not the men with the big, you know, the soldiers with the big hats, and you know, it was incredible. And the idea that we went from that in 2012 to the referendum in 2016 is so shocking and depressing, I think. And I have hopes for the future, because there is going to be terrible destruction of our economy and all this kind of thing. And I think it's at those times that you can start to be cool again. One of the things that happened, I think, with every major city, New York, London, everything got too expensive. And so New York now looks like London in most places, most of the shops, and the interesting things are being driven out further and further away. And this is an opportunity to get them back in again, I think. But our leaders, our politicians, a lot of our media, I am constantly embarrassed every single day. I mean, Boris Johnson is a clown, you know, a complete charlatan. And the idea that this man represents our country is incredible to me.
So we have high hopes together. Nick, it was a pleasure talking to you. The biggest luck for your fantastic book, just like you.
Thank you so much. It was very nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
See you again, I hope.
I hope so too. Bye.
Bye. Bye.